and welcome to the second installment of Frasier Fridays, where every salad is tossed and all the eggs are scrambled. Today, we're going to look at the sophomore episode of Frasier, entitled Space Quest. My initial gut thought with this title was it's a reference to Galaxy Quest, but that didn't come out for another 6 years, so I guess that theory was no good. This episode originally aired on September 23rd, 1993. It attracted 27 million viewers, a drop of 1.1 million viewers from the pilot episode, but still above the season average of 26.8 million. This episode, like the first, is directed by James Burrows. Burrows would go on to direct another 31 episodes of the show, most during the first and second season. Space Quest was written by Cy Duquesne and Denise Moss. This writing team previously wrote a few episodes of The Wonder Years, Roseanne, and Murphy Brown. They'd go on to write 4 more episodes in the first season of Frasier, before departing to create and run a show called The Home Court. The Home Court is pretty much forgotten today, so I don't know what kind of critical reception it got at the time. As it made so little cultural impact, I haven't been able to find any classic reviews online. Today it sports a poor 6.5 on IMDb. The show chronicled the adventures of a divorced Chicago judge and her 4 children. It ran for 1 season and a mere 20 episodes before it was pulled off NBC. It ended the season tied as the 3rd lowest rated NBC show with 5.1 million viewers and the 2nd lowest rated sitcom for the network, coming in behind another show about a psychiatrist called Minor Adjustments that no one has ever heard of. Duquesne pretty much faded into obscurity after this, with a mere 2 credits to his name after the Home Court ended. Moss is still active today, and has moved on to being a writer/producer for Disney Channel original programming. Keep this in mind as we get into this episode. The episode starts with the logo, like the pilot. This episode features a yellow elevator moving up the Space Needle, instead of a red blinking dot on the top, like in the pilot episode. Apparently, there are around 20 different animations they use for this intro, so we'll look at more of those as we get through them. This episode continues the use of those title cards I liked so much from the pilot episode, so that's a happy return for me. Also, like the pilot episode, there's not a B-plot to this episode. I'm wondering if that's going to be a common theme moving forward. I'm kind of hoping it's not. Don't get me wrong, Dr. Crane can more than carry the full 23 minutes by himself. It's just that I prefer to see some of the other characters get the chance to stretch their legs, as it were. The plot for this episode involves Frasier getting used to not having his own space anymore, now that Daphne and Martin are living with him. Our poor doctor just wants to read his new book. The episode opens back in Frasier's apartment, which is already starting to change now that the doc's not there living alone. Frasier goes to his kitchen to have his cup of morning coffee, and is absolutely disgusted when he discovers this isn't his Starbucks blend anymore. Martin tells Frasier Daphne added eggshells and allspice to the coffee. This is personally something I'd never heard of before this, and since I like a dark brew, I don't see myself ever trying it, but this isn't just Daphne being wacky. Adding eggshells to coffee is a century-old tradition. It's called cowboy coffee or campfire coffee, and actually helps make the flavor more mild, since eggshells are made from calcium carbonate. The jokes with Eddie in this episode are pretty much the same ones we had in the pilot episode. The wonderful thing is, being a cute animal, it doesn't even matter. They still earn at least a grin from me every time. We get the introduction of a new character in this episode with Bob Bulldog Briscoe of the Gonzo Sports Show. Apparently, he normally broadcasts from Studio C, but his transmitter is down, so he needs to work from Frasier's studio today. Bob Briscoe, great alliteration by the way, is played by Dan Butler, who is best known for... honestly, it's either this role or the voice of Mr. Simmons on Hey Arnold. Briscoe is one of those interesting actors who never does regular roles in anything. As close as he gets is literally this in Hey Arnold, and instead shows up as a guest star in several shows a year. There's a documentary that came out about 10 years ago I saw called That Guy Who Was in That Thing. It's about this kind of actor. I highly recommend it if you want to learn more about what actors like Butler do to just make their career out of guest starring in things. Briscoe's not in this documentary, but Timothy Odmanson is. He's best known for playing Lassiter in Psych, and he will show up in a season 6 episode of Frasier. Bulldog is kind of an obnoxious character, and all his jokes were definitely one note, which isn't bad. I mean, heck, Norm made 11 seasons of Cheers by being a one-joke character. But I'm hoping future appearances of Bulldog, we see a bit more of the actual character, and not just his radio personality. Next, we get a quick scene with Roz talking on the phone with her mother, discussing things I would rather die than discuss with my mother. After the entire Ma Clavin and Cliff relationship in Cheers, I'm happy to see another family relationship beyond the Crane clan already showing up in the series. If Roz's relationship with her mother turns into a much healthier version of the Clavins, I could see some comedy gold coming from that. We get a new shot of the interior of the coffee shop, in this episode with Frasier hiding in the corner trying to read his book. The book he's reading is A Holotropic Mind by Stanislav Grof. This book came out in January of '92, so it's only a little over a year old at this point. Grof is an interesting guy. Throughout most of the 1960s, his research focused largely on LSD and the therapeutic uses of it. When it became outlawed, he continued studying other psychedelics, and he added mysticism and meditation to his works. It honestly doesn't seem like the kind of psychiatry Frasier would be interested in, but I'm not a psychiatrist, so what do I know? Daphne makes reference to a man named Kyle who helps out with things in the apartment. I highly doubt this is a character we'll ever see or hear about again, but on the off chance we do, I wanted to make note that he's first mentioned here. While Frasier and Martin try to bond, Frasier makes another Cheers reference in this episode. This one is to the episode entitled The Girl in the Plastic Bubble, where he quite literally climbs onto the ledge after discovering Lilith is leaving him. Frasier tells Martin thinking about his son is what got him off the ledge. That's not actually how it happened in the Cheers episode. Lilith is the one who talked him down. But acknowledging this wouldn't have made for as heartwarming of a scene, or drawn the nice father-son parallels that they were going for, so I'm willing to give the writers a pass on this one. The episode ends with Frasier in the basement storage area, with all the items from his study that no longer fit in his apartment around him. The Doctor finally gets a chance to read. The scene plays in the background as the credits roll and tossed salad and scrambled eggs plays. I like that we're getting a bonus scene again with the credits over top, and like the title cards, this is a stylistic choice I'd like to see continue. The first goof I want to call out comes at approximately the 8-minute and 30-second mark of this episode. If you look at everything on Frasier below his neckline, you'll see he's slightly translucent. This can happen when there's a multi-exposure of the film. This means there was a shot taken of the studio with Frasier standing there and one without, and for whatever reason, the editor accidentally combined the two, giving us the transparency effect. The next goof I'm going to call out is two brief appearances of the boom mic at the top of the screen. The first one appears at 11 minutes and 52 seconds, and the second at 17 minutes and 33 seconds. You'll see the first boom mic in the upper middle of the screen as soon as the shot moves away from Frasier. The boom mic at the 17-minute mark is actually just a shadow of a boom mic. You'll be able to see that in the middle right as soon as the shot pans wide. The final goof of the episode is at the 5-minute and 19-second mark. In the upper right-hand corner, we get a brief glimpse of Moose's trainer's hand. It appears right beside Martin. None of these goofs are big deals, and they are all blink and you miss some mistakes. Unlike the first episode, this one wasn't nominated for any awards, so there's nothing to say here. The guest caller in this episode is Christopher Reeves, aka the original Superman. It seems Clark Kent is suffering from agoraphobia. Frasier, being Frasier, tells him they're only talking about intrusion today, and his problem is too difficult for him to talk through. He sends him information to talk to an actual professional. So, unlike the first episode, Frasier might have actually been helpful to his caller here. Reeves was the guest for this episode in part because Frasier wanted solitude, and Superman is best known for staying in his fortress of solitude. Since I managed to tie Vampirella to Frasier in my first review, I'm going to make an even wider inference here. I'll admit this one is pretty unlikely, but Frasier was a really popular show at the time, so it is still possible. In 1999, Dean Koontz released a book called False Memory. The plot involves an evil psychiatrist implanting sick and terrible false memories in an agoraphobic woman's head. Assuming it took Koontz a year to write and another 6 months to put out, that would put his writing start for this book around 1997. This episode was out for 4 years at that time. I don't know if Koontz is a Frasier fan, but I think it would be interesting if Christopher Reeve's guest call spot influenced one of the darker Dean Koontz books. Overall, this is a fine episode. There's no exceptionally brilliant jokes, and a couple that even felt a little bit flat and reused. Notably, Daphne promises not to spoil the paper for Frasier at the start of the episode. Then Niles ruins the end of his book in the coffee shop scene. It wasn't a bad episode by any means, but it's not going to be anyone's favorite. It feels like something a slightly better, more mature version of what you might find on a Disney Channel sitcom, which, given where the writer moved on to, does make a certain amount of sense. Find a storage room or some other sanctuary and give this 6.5 out of 10 episode of Frasier a watch.